Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
It's 9 o'clock. This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen. In my big opinion, there's a problem in this country and it smells like you-know-what because it is you-know-what and our waterways are absolutely full of it. In the big story, as the Home Secretary James cleverly warns against allowing asylum seekers to exploit the system, and with churches empty this Easter, has Britain lost faith with the church? Plus, as the Met Police tells a Jewish woman at a Palestine march that displays of a swastika need to be taken into context, is the Met Police fit for purpose? And in my take at 10, at a time when the country seems to be full of protests, is now this the new normal? Two hours of big opinion, big debate and big entertainment. And I'll see you after the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Steve, thank you. The top stories this hour. King Charles has made his first significant public appearance since his cancer diagnosis. Joined by the Queen, he smiled and waved as he left an Easter Sunday service at St George's Chapel in Windsor and went on to greet crowds. A member of the public told the King to keep going strong, and others said he looked well. The Prince and Princess of Wales missed the service as Catherine continues her cancer treatment. Meanwhile, the Archbishop of Canterbury has wished the King and Princess of Wales well during his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral. Justin Welby encouraged the congregation to pray for Charles and Catherine and praised their dignity as they both undergo treatment for cancer. In his Easter message, the Prime Minister paid tribute to the work of churches and Christian communities across the country.
Happy Easter, everyone. This weekend, as people come together to celebrate and reflect on the message at the heart of the Easter festival, I want to pay tribute to the incredible work of Christians in this country. The churches, charities, volunteers and fundraisers who live the Christian values of compassion, charity and self-sacrifice, supporting those in need and demonstrating what it means to love thy neighbour.
Thousands of people turned out to see Pope Francis preside over Easter Mass at the Vatican. The pontiff delivered his Urbi et Orbi blessing from the balcony of St Peter's Basilica. Pope Francis, who's been dealing with health problems in recent weeks, used his address to renew his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, along with the release of all Israeli hostages. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister says more than 200 gunmen have been killed by his country's forces at a hospital in northern Gaza. Another hospital further south was also targeted by an airstrike. Several tents on the grounds of the Al-Shifa were hit, reportedly killing 4 people and injuring others, including journalists. The Israeli military says it was focusing on a terrorist command centre, the precise hit designed to minimise civilian casualties. Benjamin Netanyahu also declared there would be no victory over Hamas without a raffle operation. And almost 400 migrants crossed the English Channel today as weather conditions continue to deteriorate. Over both days this weekend, Border Force officials intercepted 16 small boats carrying 735 people. It takes the total number of those who've arrived illegally to more than 5,400 this year. That's a third higher than the figure recorded this time last year. For the latest stories, sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Steve.
Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen. In my big opinion, there's a problem in this country, and it smells like you-know-what because it is you-know-what, and our waterways are absolutely full of it. In the big story, as Home Secretary James cleverly warns against allowing asylum seekers to exploit the system, and with churches empty this Easter, has Britain lost faith with the church? As the Met Police tells a Jewish woman at a Palestine march that displays of the swastika need to be taken into context, is the Met Police fit for purpose? In my take at 10, at a time when the country is full of protests, is now this the new normal? Plus, are the Tories and Reform at war? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, former Conservative minister and now Reform supporter Anne Widdecombe. We've got tomorrow's front pages at 10:30 with 3 top pundits who haven't been told what to say and who don't follow the script. I don't know why we bother writing one. Tonight, Sajila Kershi, Wayne Sleep and Joseph David are here. Plus, the Orkney shop owner who mistakenly ordered more eggs than his entire island's population has been raffling them off for charity. He will exclusively reveal the winner of that raffle later in this hour. A big 2 hours to come. We start with my big opinion. We've got a problem in this country, and it smells like you-know-what, because it is you-know-what. It's all throughout our waterways. They're absolutely full of it. You'd think in the 6th richest nation you could manage basic sanitation, but in 2024 in the UK, you'd be wrong. And it's so bad that this weekend's boat race was affected by the amount of E. coli in the Thames. I know what you're thinking. When will these kids who go to Oxford and Cambridge universities get a break in life? But it is an embarrassment. We can't hold an event on our rivers now. The rowers were given safety advice before the race that they should avoid getting any splashed water in their mouths during a rowing race. You might as well tell them to try not to rush. Leonard Jenkins of the Oxford men's team said it would be a lot nicer if there wasn't as much poo in the water. How terrible that needs to be said. The only time that would be worse is if you read that in a TripAdvisor review of a cafe. On Wednesday, Environment Agency figures revealed raw sewage spills doubled last year in England to 3.6 million hours of spills, compared with 1.75 million hours in 2022. I was shocked that it happens so much we have to measure poos by the hour. To put that in context that you might understand, an hour of poo is about 30 trips for a woman and about 2 for a man. This is because our water systems get overwhelmed when they get a lot of rain. Hello, have you met the UK before? Rain is pretty much our thing. Sewage is spilled into the waterways to prevent the system backing up. In a statement issued before the race, Thames Water said, "We have experienced higher than average long-term rainfall across London." Yeah, how can you have higher than average long-term rainfall? If it's long-term, it increases the average. Do the math, step up and learn to cope with it. Water companies have 2 jobs. Well, they've got loads of jobs. They keep releasing them into our rivers. But they've got 2 main functions that we want them to provide. They should give us clean, drinkable water, Remember that when in a few months' time we're going from higher than average long-term rainfall to hosepipe bans. Water firms in England and Wales lost 1 trillion litres via leaky pipes in 2021. That's more than 3.5 Lake Windermere's wasted. Yet you'll be told you can't water your rhododendron. The other role that we need them to provide is to take our waste away and keep it away. And that's not what's happening. If you're a wild swimmer, there's a good chance you'll be reunited with your waste if you go for an open-mouth swim. What can we do if the water companies continue to fail? Basically, nothing. I mean, I'd say we could fine them, but that'll just be added to our water bills that we pay. We'll be paying more for the pleasure of swimming with our own poops. And it won't hit their profits. In 2022-23, England's water firms made £1.7 billion in pre-tax profits, up 82% since 2018. Water UK, the industry trade body, says bills would increase by 6% on average for the next financial year. That's more than the current 4% rate of inflation. You know what I'd accuse them of taking, but they're not, are they? And they're letting it out into the rivers for the boat racers to drink it. It would help if we could have a nuanced debate about privatisation. You don't have to always love it or always hate it. So publicly owned British Telecom was way too slow and needlessly bureaucratic. It used to take months to apply for a second phone to be installed in your own home. But privatisation only works when you can bring in competition. If I don't like my local water company, my only option is to buy lots of bottled water and wash my clothes in the local river. And I'm not going near that thing, it's full of poops. Having a private company in charge of a local monopoly will always mean they'll prioritise profits over reinvestment to keep the system running. If you have any solutions, I would say you should float them by me, but we've got enough of that happening already. So what do you think? gbviews@gbnews.com, and I'll get your emails shortly. First, let's hear from tonight's top pundits. Comedian and broadcaster Sajila Kershi, Wayne Sleep joins us, dance and performer, and Yosef David, political commentator, join me to go through some of these stories. But let's talk water, first of all. Good to see you all, by the way. Hello. So, Sajila, would you fancy going for a wild swim, knowing what we know?
No, I'm actually terrified. I think that's just horrible. Who knew poo had made so much money for people, other people?
Well, I mean, there are certain websites, but I don't think that's what you're talking about. But yeah, they're making money and they're not reinvesting it. And it's all very well being ripped off in some areas. But, you know, water's kind of essential. Wayne, I'm presuming you drink.
Well, I don't drink Thames water, but I do have a contract with Thames Water coming through the tap.
Right.
But I live right on the water, and I was told about 5 years ago when we moved there that it's getting cleaner. There are fish now right inland where I am. There was a seal that was swimming along, and I phoned them to say, you've got to turn it round. The ocean's that way and not this way. And they said, oh, no, it just goes to prove, Mr. Sleep, that the waterways are getting so clean now, it can find fish to eat up here. 2 days later, it was dead on the beach. So I'm not surprised. I wonder as well, though, if these houseboats, you know, have something, you know, that...
I think it's houseboat poo.
Well, no, I've not had houseboat poo. Have you?
I've never had a poo.
30 million hours, there'd be a lot of
but I know, but I'm not... No, what I was saying was not that they're doing it. I was worried about, you know, that they must see it much more. I mean, why were we only warned yesterday or whenever the boat race was on? And by the way, if you want to test for E. coli, boys in the canoes, I'm quite willing, you know, because I'm free at the moment.
Oh.
You can just nip down there with a
I'll give them a test, yes.
Yeah.
But no, well, my name is Wayne, so I could end up like a coxswain, couldn't I? That was my joke for the evening, sorry.
That could have gone worse than it did as well, halfway through. It was like, where's he taking this?
I know, it could have gone the other way.
It's appalling, isn't it? Yes,
it's appalling.
We pay good money for it, we're about to pay 6% more.
It's a national disgrace, actually, and thank goodness, because of the boat race, it's getting the attention that it very much deserves. Our water companies have been deliberately pumping millions of hours worth of sewage into our waterways, and you run the risk of sepsis or E. coli if you come into contact with it. And I'm all for privatisation if it's done properly. The idea of privatisation is that you get competition and that prices go down and that the quality quality of the service goes up. And in actual fact, what we've got is monopolies, and it's the exact opposite. I have to say, as a Conservative, this strikes me as deeply immoral. We're spending billions of pounds on green levies and converting to gas pumps and heat pumps, instead of actually dealing with a fundamental issue. Sewage sanitation is the bedrock of a developed country, so we should at least be able to expect to drink the water and to be able to go into the water.
Well, the way that we have the situation set up at the moment, if we suddenly took some of that green money and started to spend on fixing the system, don't we still run the risk of that money just being absorbed by the companies, the private companies that own it? Whether they deliver on getting the stuff fixed now or not, in the future they might not. Because if you're focused on those dividends rather than making the pipes not leak, you're always going to have this problem.
As I understand it, the current system, which I believe has been allowed by both main parties, means that we, the consumer, underwrite any debt, particularly for Thames Water. So should they go bust, and they might, we'll be paying again. So there isn't really any reason for them to improve on their work, because if everything goes wrong, we have to stump up the money again.
So, Gila, it leaves a bitter taste in the mouth, and obviously I mean both the situation and Pmqs water. Never tried it myself, but probably won't.
I only drink mineral water, so because I don't trust tap water anyway. But I mean, now we've had this situation. It's interesting that you're saying, oh, you know, under the you're a Conservative, because I think it is down to them.
It's both main parties.
Brexit. Huh? Why is it both parties?
I'm sure Brexit is blamed for everything. I'll tell you why. Because Gordon Brown, you might be able to say that the Tories haven't changed the system, but Gordon Brown knew what he was doing when Thames Water was plundered and when people were allowed to take out the amount of money that they have been. So yes, the Conservatives...
We didn't have these big reports, because we had the sea not too long ago. I thought it was just a method just to get rid of, like, the boats stopping from coming over, just sending out poop out into the sea. I thought that was some weird sort of, you know, maybe Rwanda wasn't working and that was the way to stop the boat.
Goodness.
But we have had this under the Tory watch, and I also blame Brexit. I think things have got worse progressively. Nobody cares about anything after Brexit.
Well, it's a very easy thing. It's a very easy thing to blame. Well, you would, because you don't support the Conservatives, but it's not...
I don't support anyone right now.
But what about the wider picture of the trend of privatisation? I remember it, you know, in the 80s, it was a cool word. People were thinking, this is the way to improve a system. And you can, as you say, you can improve a system when done properly, but if there is no competition, why privatise the things that we should have been able to spot this coming? The same's half true about the trains as well, I suppose, whereas I think British Telecom was famously such a bad institution, such a slow way of having... You know, we wouldn't be having iPhones right now if we still had that. Wayne, just to put all the pressure on you, how do we fix this?
Well, but a while ago, they were going to privatise the national health, weren't they? They were going to sell it to America, to an owner over there. But I find that every time I go to the National Health, unfortunately, the queues are getting longer. It's 5 hours extra. But now they've decided to keep the National Health because COVID came in. And we've just reversed the policy because how well we did for that to come in and sort of, you know, try and find out how the National Health was run. And it got 10 out of 10, didn't it? So do we need, you know, a virus every so often to remind us how good the National Health Service is?
If you need a virus, there's loads in the Thames.
Yeah, this is true.
Think of that, I'll sort you out.
Yes.
And Julie, your ideas for a fix? You're a renationalised kind of person.
I am not. Yeah, of course I am. Yeah. I just think that people aren't invested in the product or what they're offering. What's happening is that nobody cares. It is about profits. So they're putting profits before people. And ultimately, it's the consumer that suffers. It's the everyday person that suffers.
Yeah.
But, yeah, I mean, we are sitting in a pile of it, aren't we, really?
There is an elephant in the room that I don't believe anybody but me will mention. We have a surging population and we have rampant development. So there are areas that were designed for a small population and now have high-rises and this relentless development. So, of course, there's going to be overflows when it rains. So yes, we have to talk about privatisation, but also the fact that our population is exploding and our infrastructure hasn't been... The funding hasn't been diverted to actually make it possible to support the population that we have. Whether or not our population should be growing as fast as it is, I personally think no. But that's what people...
Do you think it might be all the immigrants' fault, then?
Oh, dear.
The fact
is that where we're going with this?
Well, we have a receding population that somehow...
blame it. Well, I'm going to blame the Tories, and you're blaming the...
I'm not blaming immigrants. I'm saying that we have an exploding population and the infrastructure has not caught up.
But just to break it down one step at a time through that logic, then. So you're not saying it's too many people are causing this, because the maths isn't too many poos, it's too much flood water, isn't too much storm water, which obviously runs faster if there's no interception store because you've knocked things down to build houses. But the normal argument is we haven't built houses. Even with a booming population, we've not converted...
We've converted houses into flats. So a road that was designed to house 100 people now might have 3,000 on it.
But that won't make things flood quicker, will it?
It will mean that the overflows will build up faster when it rains.
More toilets.
There'll be certain areas where it's diluted sewage water. This goes into the areas that are for holding, and then when it rains, there's a risk of overflow and it backing up through people's toilets, so they let it go into our waterways.
Yeah, I live in a flat, so that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
So I can see your point in that one, how that might...
It's overdevelopment. It's to some extent these horrific pre-designed on some computer system buildings that you're seeing going up in every area that could be anywhere in the world. To some extent, this is making the problem worse.
What about the... Oh, you're gone, Wayne.
When we flood where I am, it doesn't come up to my door because there's a little street. But down on the pathway on Strand on the Green, they regularly have high tides at a certain time of the year and they know when they are. But recently, because of the rain, it's been flooding right up. Well, it goes right up to half their doorstep, and they've got stuff to put in to stop it leaking. But I mean, are they now being left with poo all over their gardens?
Yes.
I mean, this is terrible. And so the E. coli is encroaching on the land, and so it's going to spread and spread.
And it's interesting you say that because we had the same flooding. And it was all outside our flats.
Yes.
And now, of course, people say take your shoes off before you come in.
Yeah.
And that suddenly struck me, and I thought, yeah, that really makes sense because obviously you're stepping past what has been kind of effectively, waste.
Exactly.
Waste, and then walking into your home.
And it seems like the Thames barrier is coming into no effect at all if rain comes from inland.
Yeah.
It's not coming from the sea.
Yeah,
and at some point that barrier is going to break down, they said, and we're going to flood right up to South Kensington. That's what I read a few years ago.
Well, it might be with South Kensington.
There is another elephant in the room. It's a slightly greener hue of elephant, because these problems are linked to extreme weather events. Should we prepare because of climate change? Who's going to take the climate change angle?
Climate change. It was so funny. I had that thought, we're going to go down. Climate change is the next one.
Yeah, you've got to talk climate change. Yeah. Do you think, Owen, is that something worth bearing in mind?
Climate change, but also our inability to cope with any kind of weather. Leaves on a track. Whether it's more rain, whether it's snow, whether it's the heat, we just can't cope in this country with any weather.
Anything.
You think we'd cope with rain because that's like kind of our default, kind of.
But we did used to be able to, though, before privatisation and maybe changes in demographic numbers. But we did used to be able to have nice water coming out the tap, not necessarily loads of hosepipe bans, and the ability to flush something away and it stayed gone.
Yes, but I mean, that's when we had nice seasons. We had snow in the winter, we had a spring, then we had a summer. Autumn, it's sort of all merged into one mishmash of poo.
Joseph, as the person leaning on the right, climate change. We've all got to go Greta, haven't we?
So, look, I would say we do not need to go Greta. The issue with climate change is that they always seem... The religious climate change activists always seem to have an answer for everything, and it is almost like another religion. I think what we need to do is bear in mind quality of life as well. Why I mentioned green levies at the start of the show is the fact that it's not taking into account the impact that it has on everyday people. This is about our government responding to changes in demographics and to making sure that there isn't poo released into our waters. I don't think it's got to do with climate change. The seasons are fairly stable.
Well, excellent stuff. Keep your views coming in, but coming up next in the big story, as Home Secretary James Cleverly warns against allowing asylum seekers to exploit the system. And with churches empty this Easter, has Britain lost faith with the church? This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with Stephen Allen.
This is GB News, Britain's news channel.
Is the brand of toothpaste super important here, or is it more about the toothbrush? Because I was told a long time ago by my dentist, electric toothbrush, Pip, that is the way to go.
You're exactly right. I mean, the action of mechanically removing plaque, so using a brush, is much more effective than the brand of toothpaste itself. But in terms of the ingredient in toothpaste that we're looking for, it's something called fluoride. And fluoride is essential to help remineralize and strengthen our teeth. It's really important to use a toothpaste with fluoride. And in terms of brushing, using an electric toothbrush is just much easier. You know, you're brushing your teeth first thing in the morning, last thing at night. You're going to be a bit tired in those times. So using an electric toothbrush, you just hold it against your tooth and gum and it does all the work for you. So it's just much easier in my opinion.
But you have to use your electric toothbrush properly.
You're exactly right. Yeah, there is a technique of actually brushing your teeth, although it sounds really simple. With an electric toothbrush, you have to hold it against the tooth and the gum. Ideally, you want a pressure sensor in that toothbrush so you know exactly when you're pressing too hard. But if you're using a manual toothbrush, you need to move it around and small circular motions. But actually what I see is people who use manual toothbrushes, they tend to over scrub and over brush, which can actually lead to gum recession and your enamel thinning long term.
Sometimes I will get up in the morning and I will have breakfast and then I'll brush my teeth. Is that wrong?
Unfortunately, that's wrong. So the best time to brush your teeth is first thing in the morning, as soon as you wake up. If you're brushing after you eat and after breakfast, you're brushing your teeth in that weakened acidic state. So your teeth are actually under attack and they're much more vulnerable.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
Pmqs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's Pmqs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen. Let's get some of your emails. Marie says, our sewage system was put in a long time ago when there were 60 million people in this country. There's now nearly 70 million people in this country. Northern Ireland water is publicly owned and we don't have many problems. This is from Trevor. Martin on this subject says, on swimming, what is worrying is we were taught to breathe with the mouth. It sounded solid advice, but is now a tad dangerous. And lastly, from Dave, we should be able to swim in the sea or paddle in our rivers safely. Instead, these days, we can only go through the motions. Thank you for work like that. Keep them coming through. Right, now it's time for our big story tonight. Home Secretary James Cleverly has warned the Church not to allow asylum seekers to cheat the system by converting to Christianity. This after Abdul Azadi, a convicted sex offender who was one of those so-called converteds, went on to rampage with a chemical attack on the streets of London before being found dead days later. He then received a Muslim funeral after his body was pulled from the River Thames. Plus, as churches close, wardens disappear and calls are made for slave trade reparations as Britain lost faith in the Church. Joining me to discuss this is Reverend Keith Waters, who joins us. So why are things not looking good would be the first question I'd like to ask you.
Why not things not looking good with the Church?
Yeah, our fondness to, I suppose, after that list of things that are happening, it's not looking like you're having a PR success.
Well, you know, I think the Church has probably rarely had a PR success. But I think there's also a question is, what is the Church? When the Church is Christian people, it's not buildings, it's not organisations. And so I think in this country particularly, we've had a kind of lead, as far as the media are concerned, in any question you ask about faith, it's usually let's grab, if it's Christian faith, let's grab the Church of England. And I think the Church of England, you know, I speak as somebody who was once an Anglican member. I actually came to faith in an Anglican church. But there has been a real shift from faith to politics, it seems, across a lot of, sadly, a lot of denominations, not just the Anglican Church. I don't rubbish any denomination as such, but certainly organised faith, Christian faith in this country, it's not had a good press, and sometimes it's given itself quite a bad press. So I think that's part of the issue we have.
You make an interesting point there about when we speak of religion, we think of the church, almost the organisation of, and I suppose that's where the split is that's causing some of these problems, isn't it? The actual worshippers aren't necessarily on the same page, let's do the cliche, singing from the same hymn sheet as the people doing the organisation, making some statements that, as you say, might be seen as too political.
Yeah, well, what you find is an interesting thing when you look at the statistics of, you see droves of people leaving the church, and these statistics. Actually, there are churches that are growing in number. The churches that are growing in number are those that are preaching the truth of the gospel. On a day like today, we had a good full church. It's not very different on any other week. We have people coming in who want to know about the truth of Jesus Christ, and so the church is a family of believers. It is sadly these days seen in the media as something of a parody, really, of true faith.
And what do you think of one of the stories we were talking about there, the Home Secretary warning about what is being perceived as a system of cheating the official asylum system by turning up to the UK, saying you've converted, and then getting the backing of the church to make the error that you accused me of earlier?
Well, I'd say he's absolutely right. As a Christian minister, I'm really perplexed and confused as to how somebody could come in as clearly somebody, a follower of the Islamic faith, and suddenly convert to Christianity. Now, that can happen, of course, but as I mentioned, a church is a family of believers, and so somebody, if they were to turn up, and we have people from all sorts of places will be part of our church family, but we get to know them. We don't just kind of get to know them as they are. If somebody who converts to Christianity, which does sound kind of like weird, old-fashioned jargon, but becomes a Christian, well, the truth is there will be a change, a natural change in their behaviour and attitudes. I mean, you might not think it, but I'm actually the improved version of me. That's the way it works. It comes around naturally, and so if you don't see that, if there is no change, then why would you go through the process of enabling somebody to make a public confession of faith, which they clearly don't have? And I can see that maybe there's maybe you think, well, it's a numbers game. We just want to get the tick in the box. That's a dreadful thing. That is nothing to do with the Christian faith. Christian faith is willingly accepting those who will accept Jesus and giving them the opportunity to make that statement, say, Jesus has made such a difference in my life, I want to commit my life to him, and I want to live for him. And you'll see that actually there'll be people who'll be not just turning up on a Sunday. Somebody could turn up on a Sunday, they do it to get into schools, don't they? So I understand if you want to get into an Anglican school, to turn up on a Sunday or a Methodist school or whatever, you could do that. But actually, this is about life. So you're going to turn up at other things. You're going to be in getting to know people, and it's a big difference.
Isn't there an issue that regardless of how high you set the bar, if the prize at the end of it is having someone be in your corner when trying to go through the asylum system, you will simply find out what you need to do and do it. It draws that parallel to, as you say, the schools. People work out what is the bare minimum they need to do to get the benefit of having the church on their side.
Sadly, I think that's what seems to have happened. But I hope I've explained well enough that there wouldn't be that bare minimum. It is a case of there is a sure and certain hope that people will have, and that is reflected in their lives. You can't. It's not something that you can kind of hide. You could certainly tick the boxes. I could have a great business going of ticking boxes, getting people coming through just to make numbers look what they were and get asylum claims going. That'd be a dreadful thing to do.
And we should say, I should just say the Archbishop of Canterbury has previously said there's no evidence to support claims of the Church of England subverting the asylum system by allowing spurious conversions to Christianity. So I guess it's worth bringing that side of the argument in, but pointing out that it is a contentious issue. Yeah,
because it turns out that it's not just the Church of England. whilst I've said they're not necessarily the best representative of Christianity in this country, and I would stand by that, there are some great Christians in the Anglican Church, but also the hierarchy give a very skewed view of what believers believe. It's not the same thing. But there are other people who are doing this, I'm sure.
Yeah.
It's not just that particular denomination.
Yeah, well, thank you for that, Reverend Keith Waters. Thank you for joining us. Coming up with tonight's top pundits, we're going to take a look at all of the weird and wonderful news across Easter, plus the Orkney shop owner who mistakenly ordered more eggs than the entire island's population has been raffling them off for charity. He will exclusively reveal the winner of that raffle in just a few minutes right here. This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's been fairly sunny across the northern half of the UK. We've seen increasing cloud in the south, and we're going to see further rain push in over the next few hours. But looking at the bigger picture, low pressure dominates at the moment. It does mean further showers and rain is on the way. We've got some heavy rain this evening across southern parts of England, and this pushing slowly northwards into the Midlands and Wales as we head into the early hours. Thicker cloud and rain also pushing in from the North Sea to affect northeast England. Generally a little drier across Scotland, Northern Ireland. Here some clear spells, and for most temperatures remaining above freezing. So it's a mixed start to Monday. We've got cloud and outbreaks of rain across this central swathe of the UK. Some brighter skies to the north of it and to the south, but it's to the south where we'll see some heavy showers developing as we move through into the afternoon. Some hail, some thunder in there. We could see some local disruption. Cold under the cloud and rain, particularly northern England, southern Scotland, 9 or 10 degrees. In the best of any sunny spells, either side of this, up to around 14 or 15 degrees. For Tuesday, a mixed picture. We'll have sunny spells and scattered showers across much of the country. However, low cloud, rain and drizzle will affect parts of Scotland. Then later on in the day, further wet and windy weather starts moving into the southwest. It remains unsettled through into Wednesday and Thursday with further rain at times, temperatures around average.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen. Let's get to some more of your emails. Mary said, I don't know which churches you're talking about. Here in Swindon, every church was packed to the rafters. Forgot to say, I am a Catholic, thanks be to God. Pete says, I was at church today with over 400 people. And Margaret says, the reason the churches are emptying is because the gospel is not preached or taught properly anymore. The church I go to in Swinbrook in Oxfordshire is packed, and it was especially packed today. The gospel is always preached in a way that is absorbing and alive. Most churches now have too much babble and not enough Bible. Okay. Keep them coming through with your thoughts. Now, let's move on to this. Let's take a look at some of the excellent stories which have grabbed our attention over this Easter weekend. It's a bank holiday. You've got to let us do jokes like that. Vets have been warning pet owners to avoid feeding them chocolate during Easter as chocolate poisonings are soaring. So would you think that this was not clearly obvious? Let's bring in our pundits, comedian Sajila Kershi, dancer and performer Wayne Sleep, and political commentator Yosef David. Any of you got pets, first of all? Let's go to...
No. My sister has, I think, 9 cats and a dog.
Oh,
so
my God.
Right.
I can speak with some with some authority. No, but it just goes to show that a dog is not for Christmas. It's for life. And if you do keep it past Christmas, don't kill it with an Easter egg. But thankfully, they're too expensive now, so no one's buying them, and the animals are safe.
Yes, good point. Yeah, well, and also chocolate eggs are expensive, dogs are expensive. Never the twain, surely. We all know this, don't we? That chocolate is technically a poison for humans as well. Just the quantity.
Chocolate. I was going to say, when did it stop being a poison for humans?
No, but it can kill dogs instantly.
No, it can. Yes.
Yeah, but
They're so much
it's naughty
smaller.
but nice.
Yeah.
But I mean,
Like a poison.
after I read that, when I was doing the kind of read up before the show, my neighbour's got a dog, and on the landing we've got our paper bin, and I put my chocolate. I didn't eat it. It was my friend Susie, by the way.
Yeah.
She says hello. Anyway, so I was then thinking, oh, what if he licks the box? There's bits of chocolate there.
Oh dear. Yeah.
I'm really sorry, neighbour, if the dog
If it
gets
kills
ill
a dog.
there.
No, I think it's the same as us, right? The amount of chocolate we'd need for it to be a lethal dose of that poison is huge. I think licking a few bits. But I'm not saying let your dogs lick chocolate because someone will write a letter. But I
Why
think
are you giving your dogs chocolate?
Eat
There's
the
dog
chocolate
food.
yourself, it's better. But then we're warned by NHS doctors not to overindulge, aren't we? I mean, this week there was the story...
Well, it's the sugar. It's the sugar rush that's going to kill you. It's not chocolate. It's just the sugar in sweets and everything else. So I wonder what... It must be the cocoa in chocolate that kills the dog.
Bromine or one of those chemicals in there that'll...
Yes.
If you're a dog.
Can't be the sugar, because they eat other things, don't they, dogs?
Yeah.
But they try and eat... Well, try and eat me sometimes.
Well, because Nigel Farage pushed back at the idea of the nanny state being told... I mean, it was just an NHS doctor writing a blog. It's not like official government guidance, but I wonder if he's going to cram an egg down his dog.
Well, I think they're doing us a favour. I think they're doing us a favour in a way by having the same packaging, you know, all the different products we've known since we were 5 years old, just in a sweet shop, but they're making them smaller. They're using the same colour packaging and everything, but they're making it smaller and charging more.
Which I think is really outrageous, because it doesn't taste the same.
No.
You know, if you've slimmed down the flake, we've all loved that advert, it's not the same feeling.
No.
Yeah.
No, but I think across the country you're paying more and getting less. And you mentioned the nanny state. Now supermarkets can't put Easter eggs in prominent positions anymore. They have a seasonal aisle where people can go to get their Easter eggs. God forbid someone should see it, fancy it, and buy it. And I've heard that Cadbury are talking about removing Easter from their packaging. So
they've lost so much money this year.
And it never seems to happen.
No, I don't think it will. But the fact that we're talking about it just goes to show that I think woke is trying to kill Easter eggs, as everything else.
It's ridiculous, because it doesn't make any difference whether you put Easter or not on an egg. People are going to buy it. I don't think people care.
Yeah, but also you should be allowed once in a while to indulge. That's how you have a healthy diet, is every once in a while give in to temptation and have an Easter egg and you know, splurge a little bit on your diet once in a while. I think the state needs to step back a little bit and treat
But what's it got to do with religion anyway, an egg? I mean, how did that come about?
It's rebirth, isn't it?
It's rebirth. Oh, is it supposed to be a...
Which I don't know why it's a chocolate egg. You've got me on that one, mate. I'll give you that. I also should say, for like legal reasons, you can't die from a sugar rush. You just maybe...
Oh, sorry. No.
A lifestyle of sugar.
But you can get addicted to sugar like you can to alcohol and have to go to special meetings.
Well, not everyone. Obviously,
No,
Mark Dolan is not addicted to sugar, and that's why he's not here tonight. He has to hide during Easter. It's just imagine if that...
He's got to hide.
He has to hide away from all the eggs.
But I knew a girl, I knew a lady, in fact, and she worked for Vogue magazine, and she was an alcoholic. Then she was cured of that. Then she sat at Paddington Station, she told me this, and ordered £30 of children's sweets, saying she was giving a party, and ate them all on the station, and went back home, missed all her trains.
Well, you just replaced
She could probably run home, couldn't she? She wouldn't need a train. Let's move on to the next bit. On to Orkney. Now, you might have heard this story. There's an Orkney shop owner, Dan Dafford, who made the headlines last week because there was a bit of an admin error. He ordered 80 cases of Easter eggs rather than 80 eggs. 720 eggs were then delivered to his store on the island of Sandy. And here's the problem, right? The island's population is 494. He had more eggs than people. In an attempt to get rid of some of the chocolate treats, Dan, who owns Sinclair General Stores, decided to raffle off 100 of the eggs to one lucky winner and to help raise funds for a charity. He can exclusively reveal the winner on this show. Take it away, Dan.
Hello everyone, this is the Orkney Eggman and we are doing the live draw for our raffle for the RNLI. Thank you so much everyone for supporting our effort and thank you for my staff for helping with this wonderful draw. We are live from Leeds and we are about to draw the raffle. And my good friend here, Matthew Rogers, will do just that now. So if we zoom in on the phone. And the winner of the raffle is...
Good luck to everybody. Random number generator, number 544.
And the winner is number 544.
As Dan revealed there, the ticket 544 is the winning ticket. So the winner is Russell Dolan. Congratulations, Russell, the winner of 100 Easter eggs. Don't eat them all at once, seems to be the advice, and certainly nowhere near your dog. Dan and his staff roughly sold 7,000 tickets at £1 each, and this was then doubled by Nestle, so 14 grand raised for charity. Panel thoughts, Sajila, this is a double win, isn't it? People eat chocolate and people get money.
Yeah, I thought that's a brilliant idea, but mind you, getting the 100 eggs now, what do you do with them? It's like the Millionaires', you know, when you had to give all that money away. It's like, how do you get rid of those eggs? Again, everyone's like, by Monday, everyone's like, oh, I've got sick of the chocolate eggs. Nobody's going to want them.
And Wayne, if we're brutally honest, today's the wrong day to receive lots of Easter eggs.
Yeah, but I think it's wrong. You'll be pooing so much the Thames won't have any water left in it.
But in general, it's a step in the right direction.
It's a fantastic it is story. Wonderful to give to charity. Always.
Yes, it shows the beauty of charity and the power of community. And now the RNLI will have lots more money to spend on diversity training. So good for everyone.
You just couldn't let it lie, could you? You couldn't let a good thing happen. Coming up in my take at 10. At a time when the country is full of protests, is now that the new normal? But first, is the Met Police fit for purpose? This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen.
Nana Queer, weekends from 3 p.m.
I like to call this one robbing Peter to pay Paul. The Labour Party have embarked on a journey that I can only describe as politics of envy. I think it's time we scrutinise their policies more closely and establish in our minds what a Labour government might mean to the education system. Sir Keir Starmer and his party have for far too long capitalised on the abject failure of the Conservatives and haven't really had to explain themselves. But as part of their manifesto, Labour intend to charge VAT at 20% on private schools because I suspect they think that people who send their kids there will stump up the cash no matter what, and that these people have money. They will then use this money, Labour, to fund state schools. Basically, they will rob Peter to pay Paul. But what I believe they've failed to realise, I'm not sure whether they've factored this in, is that many people who send their kids to private schools do so at great sacrifice and are in fact paying twice into the education system. I spent my first year of secondary education in a state school. I'll be honest, when I started I was at the top of the class, but by the end of the year I was near the bottom. But then my dad got promoted to a post on Wall Street in the States. My parents sent me to a private boarding school in the UK run by nuns, and my family moved to America. Thank God for the opportunity I was given to go private. At boarding school I grew in confidence, and I'm here now because of it. My father's work, NatWest, and a loan my dad took out paid for my private education. We were nowhere near as rich as some of the kids there, but there are also many children, I would say at least half, whose parents were busting a gut to send them there. It is clear that the state education system is failing, but rather than robbing Peter to pay Paul, surely it would be better for the party to improve the state system without destroying the private sector.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, every Sunday at 9:30 when I'll be interviewing the key players in British politics and taking them to task.
This report basically says that he's not fit to stand trial.
With an upcoming election looming over Westminster, now is the time for clear, honest answers.
I agree.
And that's precisely what I'll get.
Is he indecisive? Incompetent?
That's the Camilla Tominey Show at 9:30 every Sunday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's election channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 till 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back. Now, the Metropolitan Police have been criticised for telling a Jewish woman that swastikas need to be taken into context after she complained about the Nazi symbol being used in a pro-Palestine march on the banners in London yesterday. Here's what happened.
Don't talk with me because I can point these people out to you. And again, I was told when I asked that a swastika was not necessarily anti-Semitic or disruptive to public worship. That doesn't seem right to me.
Everything needs to be taken within context, doesn't it?
Yeah, but it's a context of that. Why does the swastika need context?
What exactly are you confused about?
What I'm confused is how you don't. In what context a swastika is not anti-Semitic? This is what I want to know. Because again,
I suppose to some, I don't know how everybody would feel about that sign. That has happened. I cannot. I'm here working to the Bronze Commander, and it is not my responsibility, unfortunately, my role, to walk down the road.
Have the Metropolitan Police just been caught in the middle? Are they struggling to police these marches? Yesterday was the 11th pro-Palestine march to take place in the capital since October. So is the Met Police fit for purpose? Joining me now is musician and podcaster Winston Marshall. Context needs to be included when thinking about a swastika. It's not normally a point you'd imagine someone making, is it?
Well, I think this particular example from this weekend's protests, it actually isn't as shocking as some of the other things that happened this weekend. So it might be worth just examining some of those things. It included a man shouting that proudly and smiling that he supported Hamas. It included many people pointing and screaming at the pro-Israel march that was happening also in London, saying that they were murderers and they were explicitly anti-Zionist to those people. There were kids singing Houthis, Houthis, do us proud, turn another ship around, as well as Palestine, from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. These hate marches, which, as you said, there's been 11 since this horrible war began. We're nearly at 6 months into this horrible war, which is worth remembering. A horrible war, which, of course, important for context, would be over if Hamas would release the 134 protesters and themselves surrender. I have witnessed a few of these. On October 9th, I went to the Israel Vigil on Whitehall, and it was a very solemn and despite very bleak and sad time, it had a sort of a wonderful camaraderie amongst people mourning. That evening on the tube, I came across a bunch of people who had been at the Israel embassy celebrating. And of course, your viewers will be aware, they'll have seen the well-documented footage by great photojournalists like Stuart Mitchell documenting that evening, where people were on their knees praising Allah Akbar, were setting off green and red flares. And I myself was confronted one of these people on the way home. These are anti-Israel marches. They're not pro-Palestine marches. Now, I know we want to talk about the police. I just want to say, I want to drag something I think is quite important because it's quite useful. Something that's brought up about a week ago. YouGov did a poll of the country, and they asked, do you think the Hamas attack on Israel in early October was or was not justified? Only 5% said it was justified. So yes, we are seeing every week, well, it seems like every weekend to me, these sort of marches. Okay, actually, it's a minority. It's a big minority. It's 3.3 million people
exactly. That's one of the
UK.
things that we should talk about, is that people will say these protests are largely peaceful, and in a sense, it's the bits that aren't that require the focus, rather than trying to paint that as the wide picture. The question about the police, regardless of how small and how few in number these events are, why do you think the police are doing nothing?
Well, almost worse than nothing. There's an example. There's a man, an Iranian man called Niak Gorbani. You might remember him. About 2 weeks ago, he was assaulted for holding up a Hamas is terrorist banner. And the police, instead of arresting his assaulters, arrested him. Now, this weekend, the same thing has happened. He was assaulted again, this time rather more violently. You can see his full report is on his Twitter feed. And again, the police arrested him.
But again, you're just telling me things that happen. The question that I'm trying to get to is what's the motivation? Do you think the police are afraid to act because maybe their actions would have further consequences they don't want to deal with?
It's a good question, and I obviously can't read inside their minds. I would say it's a pretty impossible situation for them. They're underfunded. They're badly supported. They've got terrible quangos behind them, like the College of Police. They're not given good directions. They're given bad directions. Sadiq Khan, who is the Police and Crime Commissioner, has been absolutely dreadful and done nothing. In fact, him and the Met Commissioner, Sir Mark Rowley, have the rather horrendous legacy of presiding over London's police and crime, whilst we have record anti-Semitism surging. I can't tell you exactly what's going on inside the police. It's rather thankless. But what's very troubling is how easy it is for them to arrest some people like Niak Gorbani, but then completely turn a blind eye to the openly anti-Semitic people. It doesn't add up, and I think people see that.
I mean, I seem to remember the police said he wasn't arrested for holding up the placard. He was arrested for a previous altercation. It's the newspapers that put those two things together. So I suppose if you dig down deeply into all of the individual stories, that's where the information truly lies. The general theme that we're trying to get to is, why do the police not do anything? Or, as you say, they do things. We hear stories of people being arrested. They boasted, possibly, of the number of arrests over the weekend. But still, it seems to be letting people getting away with things that ordinarily you think should be stopped.
They might have said that. They've said several things, and for some reason they're putting a lot of time into their Twitter feed, the Met Police, and quite regularly getting community noted, because the evidence is quite clear, and photographs and videos from what actually happens get posted. So it's not exactly clear that the Met Police are being totally truthful about what's going on.
Winston, we've got to leave it there, but thank you very much for that. Winston Marshall, I should say a spokesman for the Met Police, said, "We are aware of an online clip from today's protest in central London showing an interaction between an officer and a woman, during which there is an exchange over concerns around protesters displaying offensive banners, including swastikas. The online clip is a short excerpt of what was a 10-minute conversation with an officer. During the full conversation, the officer established that the person the woman was concerned about was already arrested for a public order offence in relation to a placard. The officer then offered to arrange for another officer to accompany the woman, identifying other persons concerned amongst the protesters, but unfortunately they had left." Let's get the latest weather.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's been fairly sunny across the northern half of the UK. We've seen increasing cloud in the south, and we're going to see further rain push in over the next few hours. But looking at the bigger picture, low pressure dominates at the moment. It does mean further showers and rain is on the way. We've got some heavy rain this evening across southern parts of England, and this pushing slowly northwards into the Midlands and Wales as we head into the early hours. Thicker cloud and rain also pushing in from the North Sea to affect northeast England. Generally a little drier across Scotland, Northern Ireland. Here some clear spells, and for most, temperatures remaining above freezing. So it's a mixed start to Monday. We've got cloud and outbreaks of rain across this central swathe of the UK. Some brighter skies to the north of it and to the south, but it's to the south where we'll see some heavy showers developing as we move through into the afternoon. Some hail, some thunder in there. We could see some local disruption. Cold under the cloud and rain, particularly northern England, southern Scotland, 9 or 10 degrees. In the best of any sunny spells either side of this, up to around 14 or 15 degrees. For Tuesday, a mixed picture. We'll have sunny spells and scattered showers across much of the country. However, low cloud, rain and drizzle will affect parts of Scotland. Then later on in the day, further wet and windy weather starts moving into the southwest. It remains unsettled through into Wednesday and Thursday, with further rain at times, temperatures around average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Good afternoon, Britain.
Weekdays from midday, we bring you the most compelling stories from across the United Kingdom.
And why it matters to you. From your doorstep to our inbox.
That's right, we want to hear from you. Good afternoon, Britain. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio, and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
It's 10 o'clock. This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen. In my take at 10, at a time when the country seems to be full of protests, is now this the new normal? Plus, are the Tories and Reform at war? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, former Conservative minister and now Reform supporter Anne Widdecombe. Plus, tomorrow's newspapers, front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. It's a packed show, lots to get through, but first the news with Tatiana Sanchez.
Steve, thank you very much and good evening. The top stories this hour. King Charles has made his first significant public appearance since his cancer diagnosis. Joined by the Queen, he smiled and waved as he left an Easter Sunday service at St George's Chapel in Windsor and went on to greet crowds. A member of the public told the King to keep going strong, and others said he looked well. The Prince and Princess of Wales missed the service as Catherine continues her cancer treatment. Meanwhile, the Archbishop of Canterbury has wished the King and Princess of Wales well during his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral. Justin Welby encouraged the congregation to pray for Charles and Catherine and praise their dignity as they both undergo treatment for cancer. Well, in his Easter message, the Prime Minister paid tribute to the work of churches and Christian communities across the country.
Happy Easter, everyone. This weekend, as people come together to celebrate and reflect on the message at the heart of the Easter festival, I want to pay tribute to the incredible work of Christians in this country. The churches, charities, volunteers and fundraisers who live the Christian values of compassion, charity and self-sacrifice, supporting those in need and demonstrating what it means to love thy neighbour.
Thousands of people turned out to see Pope Francis preside over Easter Mass at the Vatican. The pontiff delivered his Urbi et Orbi blessing from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. Pope Francis, who's been dealing with health problems in recent weeks, used his address to renew his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, along with the release of all Israeli hostages. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister says more than 200 gunmen have been killed by his country's forces at a hospital in northern Gaza. Another hospital further south was also targeted by an airstrike. Several tents on the grounds of the Al-Shifa were hit, reportedly killing 4 people and injuring others, including journalists. The Israeli military says it was focusing on a terrorist command centre, the precise hit designed to minimise civilian casualties. Benjamin Netanyahu also declared there would be no victory over Hamas without a raffle operation. And a new poll suggests the Tories are on track for their worst general election result. Survation found the party could win fewer than 100 seats, with Labour predicted to sweep to power with a landslide victory of 468 seats. The 15,000-person poll indicated the Conservatives would be wiped out in Scotland and Wales and hold just 98 seats in England. For the latest stories, you can sign up to GB News Alerts by scanning the QR code on your screen or go to gbnews.com/alerts. Now back to Steve.
Welcome to Mark Dolan Tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen. Are the Tories and Reform at war? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, former Conservative minister and now Reform supporter, Anne Widdecombe. Plus, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. Comedian Sajila Kershi, dancer and performer Wayne Sleep, and political commentator Joseph David are all with us. And they'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros a little later on. A packed hour, and those papers are coming. But first, it's my take at 10. You know a country's going well when a lot of the news is about protests, and that is what we've got. A war 2,000 miles away is affecting your ability to get around London what seems like every weekend. You can find the M25 closed when some group thinks that your loft needs extra lagging, and most weeks you get some students serving soup at a painting. What value do you put on the right to protest? They're annoying, but aren't they meant to be annoying to achieve something? Some protests have seen the use of light projection to show what many see as a threatening slogan on the Houses of Parliament. Should that be stopped? One former Tory minister, Robert Jackson, said light projections could be damaging to our historic buildings. I mean, it's only photons, it's less damaging than soup, we know that. But if it's allowed, all of the buildings could be lit up all of the time. And that'll cost a lot of carbon. That means other groups will then want to protest about it. Can you expect protesters to respect our buildings? Meanwhile, many rejoiced at the chance to see King Charles attend an official engagement, shaking hands with a crowd at Windsor Castle, assuaging the nation's worries about the monarch's health. These events still had anti-monarchy campaigners protesting despite royal cancer diagnoses. Is it a classic case of the protests you agree with, you think should go ahead, the ones you don't agree with, you think you should stop? What value should we give the right to protest? So what do you think? gbviews@gbnews.com, and I will get to your emails shortly. Firstly, let's hear from tonight's top pundits. Comedian and broadcaster Sajila Kershi is with us. Dancer and performer Wayne Sleep, and political commentator Joseph David. To go through this then, so when it comes to light projection, Sajila, is that the better option? I mean, at least no one's being souped up in a protest like that.
Yeah, and you don't have to leave the house. You just get one person to basically do the job of like 200,000, which is what the march was like yesterday, wasn't it? Or was it yesterday?
Yeah.
Lost track of days now. Easter weekend. Yeah, I mean, I've always protested, And I think it's our fundamental right to be able to protest. So I'm always going to be, we were just talking, saying, by the way, do you know that he's missed an engagement today?
Yes. I did. Yes, I want to take the opportunity to wish a mazel tov to Hezi and Tamara. I'm so sorry for missing your special day. Thanks for bringing it up.
All right, well, I can wish my friend Matthew. Hello, Matthew.
Hang on, what's happening?
I said to everybody I'll give them away. Matthew, my assistant, then, in that case. Who do you want to go, then?
No, I'm just with these silly sausages now, honestly.
Clearly, you cancelled that engagement before you realised Mark wasn't hosting the show.
No, I came for you, absolutely.
Yeah, oh, bless you.
Oh, no, you're good.
But back to the issue of the projection. I mean, it's not just the one in the Houses of Parliament, but that one particularly seems like it gets the closest you can get to a light show crossing a line. I mean, it's the least impactful protest in some ways, in terms of it's not blocking a road, it's not, but projecting on our building, should it be stopped?
Well, I agree with the former minister. I do believe it's virtual vandalism, and I think that there are some buildings in this country that hold a very high significance for the population, and nobody should be projecting on them unless they've got the permission from the correct authorities. There are very many buildings like this, and people up and down the country look to Parliament as our centre of power. Surely the messages that should be projected on Parliament should be decided by the people who run the building.
Well, it's like New Year's Eve. Sorry, go on.
Good.
Well, it's like New Year's Eve. I mean, you know, we have all these projections, we have drones, we have the whole lot. You could intercept those and put a message up saying, you know, ban all this, you know, there's a bomb coming to kill us all or something.
Or you could do a shout-out to a married couple and a birthday you wanted to mention. I mean, that's...
Yes, exactly. And I mean, I've got a lovely wall. I'm protesting that it shouldn't happen. I've got a lovely wall at home, and you could advertise whatever you like on it. And so if it gets to that stage where you're free to be able to put a light show of whatever you want to put up there anywhere, you know, they'll be using us next, they'll be projecting onto us. He's horrible.
Yeah, but where you live floods all the time. I wouldn't want half my advert covered.
No, but it might sort of reflect into the Thames poo.
But that's not too far from the reality, because there was a very big feminist show, Adrienne Truscott, when she projected female anatomy on her female anatomy. Yeah, that was making a protest. But going back to your point, where it's, you know, the Houses of Parliament is sacred. Arguably, you can say that actually it was a protest to say that we don't agree with what you're doing, because many times, as we know, the state do not necessarily speak for what the public want, the citizens want. We're not all united in what we want, but, you know, clearly that's one way of getting hurt. So I think projecting on where better to project it if you have a message that you want to give to Parliament, to give to the leaders.
Well, we live in a country where people are free to be offensive to some extent, but usually they choose not to. And there are millions of people up and down the country who would have been deeply offended by that, not just because of the message, but because these people who took it upon themselves to project something onto one of our most important buildings did it without asking anyone and without any care or concern for anybody who was upset.
Do we know that they didn't ask anyone?
Yes. Because people went to the police and they reported it, and the police were unsure whether the law had been broken. And the fact that it could be reported, the police would have then turned around and said, no, this has all been erased.
They found a loophole. They found a loophole. And that's the thing. It's like protest. If we start legislating against protesting, against, you know, the ways that we protest, then that's a really slippery road, because we all lose out then. And all the people out there that are thinking, oh, no, I hate this and I hate that and hate those people coming out and every weekend we're having to do that. Well, one day they're going to want to protest about something that matters to them, and they won't be able to because we've thwarted it. And we need to be really careful that the state is not.
Well, I mean, I've been on, you know, marches for being gay, you know, the gay marches every year. We go all the way through London, end up in Hyde Park and have a ball. But
that's a fun protest.
Oh, it's a gun, yes, but we're not the protesters. We are told where the protesters are going to be. So they'll tell us as we go down St James's, when you get to this corner, everybody that wants to protest has got permission to protest, but this is the corner, so mind flying missiles or anything like that, and you will be banners in your face. But we expect it. So I don't mind them protesting.
Yes, then that is interesting, because, like I said, I've been marching my whole life, protesting. It was a big part of the Women's March, and we knew where we were going. But you also had, on the same day, a large kind of far-right, quite racist kind of, you know, but they were protesting. That was fine, because it's not like one protest deserves more space than another. I don't have a problem with them doing that.
So if you fundamentally agree with the right to protest, you agree with the protest and the counter-protest?
Yes, absolutely.
But is there a point when we have to be practical and think of the cost, the policing cost? If you're having a protest every single weekend, and it's millions of pounds every single weekend, done Extrapolated to infinity, you bankrupt a country.
Hello. So if you had 200,000 people protesting every weekend for so long, maybe start listening to why they're protesting, finding out what's happening, and maybe address that.
Hang on a second. The point is, people have been calling for a ceasefire. The government has actually now called for a ceasefire. People should.
It's a wishy-washy ceasefire.
The protesters should congratulate themselves over
no, because
achieving
they haven't
their
succeeded.
aims.
They haven't succeeded because there hasn't been a ceasefire.
It needs to hang on. It needs to be mentioned. I'm focused in this country and the impact on the people living here. That we're all living together in a capital city that's very densely populated, and we need to take into account that message that was projected on the building, many people would find offensive, and it might make them feel less welcome in their capital city. Not to say that protests shouldn't happen, but maybe it is time that we should start thinking about the frequency of these protests, because it impacts. Everybody has to get on.
Well, I'm older than all of you, and in my day, I never thought I'd say in my day, because I used to be always told off. Well, in my day, we wouldn't do that sleep. But anyway, in my day, we had Speaker's Corner. You could go and say any speech you liked, whether it doesn't matter what it was about, and it was the freedom of speech, and it used to be a Hyde Park Corner, and it used to be one of the sights of London to come to London, Petticoat Lane and Speaker's Corner.
We're brutally honest, though. That system's all very well and made no difference at all. It's entirely ignorable. What Extinction Rebellion did, which was the first time we noticed protests changing, they realised, don't protest in a way that seems to be directed towards the thing you protest against. Protest in a way that gets us talking about it, that gets newspapers writing about it. That's why there's been a change in protest format.
I think this can be linked to current society and the sensationalism of social media. So the more attention you get, and even if it's negative attention, this raises your cause, and the more views you get actually translates to money for a lot of people in many instances. And unfortunately, it has resulted in these garish protests that block main roads and stop ambulances from getting to where they need to be, becoming the modus operandi of a lot of organisations. I would say this. You mentioned Queen Camilla and there being protests when she went to church. Deep down, I think the royal family will be very proud of the fact that they preside over a country where people can protest and they can come there and have freedom. And if we just compare ourselves to Russia or the theocrats in Iran, we're very lucky to be able to protest in this
And better the evil you know. Keep it above ground. Don't put it underground where it has to be illegal.
Well, keep your emails coming through on that as well. Plus, coming up, are the Tories and Reform at war? I'll be asking tonight's newsmaker, former Conservative minister and now Reform supporter, Anne Widdecombe. Plus, tomorrow's front pages and instant reactions from tonight's top pundits sat over there. This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen.
Britain's newsroom, weekday mornings from 9:30.
Men's mental health. Men are starting to talk a lot more. You've been through a lot of stuff that people don't know about.
Yeah, I mean, the last few years for me have been very, very difficult. People see me on tour, performing, making music, but myself and my wife, we went through 2 miscarriages. For us, that was a very devastating time and very difficult to know how to kind of process those emotions. And I guess as a man, I did the thing of bottling up my emotions, and where I feel comfortable to be able to express myself is in the studio, whereas, she had obviously a different reaction to, what happened to us, because not only was it happening to her mentally, psychologically, but it was happening to her physically as well. And I think something that she really wanted to see from me was that sensitivity and that emotion. And I thought that as a man, being strong was trying to bottle up my emotions and just show her that, that I'm being strong for her. But actually being strong is talking about it. And what's happened ever since I've started to talk about it is I've spoken to more men that have experienced baby loss. My wife forced out of me, how do you feel? And I ended up as a mess on the floor. I was exasperating, crying, almost inconsolable. She was just holding me in her arms as we cried together, and and I didn't realise I needed that release so badly. Like I said, I've been able to speak to other men, and we've been able to cry together, and they shared their own experiences, which they did similar to me. But actually, as men, I feel like that conversation and that sensitivity and being able to be emotional together.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen. Let's get to some of your emails. Susan sends one and says there's 2 ingredients that are poisonous to dogs and can be fatal. This is in chocolate. It's theobromine and caffeine. Never give your dog chocolate. I never do. I agree. I eat it all myself. And I don't have a dog. So there's 2 good reasons why I'm safe from that one. Jim says one has the right to protest in the UK. Fairly end of matter statement there. And lastly, from Gordon, can you give a shout out to Sandra and myself as everyone else on the show is doing it, please? Lol. Certainly can. Big shout out to you and Sandra. Thank you very much for that. Keep the emails coming through. Let's crack on to the next thing, which is, given this weekend, it seems to be all kicking off between Reform UK and the Tories and the Mail on Sunday. Reform UK posted on X claiming that the Tories have been working with the Mail on Sunday to do a hatchet job on them. Reform UK prefaced the investigation by saying the Mail on Sunday is being selective in not reporting facts correctly. However, the Mail on Sunday posted this article in today's paper revealing an investigation into Reform UK candidates. It continued to kick off on X between the 2 parties this morning. Richard Tice posted this onto a Conservative Party Deputy Chairman Jonathan Gullis in response to him criticising Reform UK in the Mail article. Given the multiple bits of embarrassing personal information we have on you, I suggest you pipe down on your attacks against me. Richard Holden, the Conservative Party chair, then responded saying this. What a threatening bully Richard Tice is exposing himself to be, silly man. Ooh, it's all kicking off, isn't it? So, what's going on? Joining me now is former Conservative Minister and now Reform supporter, Anne Widdecombe. So, why is it all kicking off, Anne?
Oh, because the Tories are getting rattled. If you actually look at what has been happening over the last, say, 6 months, our position in the polls has climbed very steadily, now regularly at 14%. One poll even at 16, and each one putting us just a few points behind the Tories. Now, they began off by dismissing us as they've realised that we're getting stronger and stronger, so they are getting more and more afraid. And so what we're now seeing, and I think we're going to see a lot more of it between now and the general election, it's the product of Tory panic. They're good at panicking. They usually change their leader. This time they've decided to have an attack on another leader. So it takes a change, doesn't it?
Is this not just politics, though? I mean, this is what happens, isn't it? I'm sure they have mean things to say about Labour.
I'm sure that they do, and let them get on and say it, and let Labour get on and say it about them. But what we've been doing is concentrating on policies, things like proportionality and net zero, actual policies to deal with immigration rather than just talking about it. That's what we're focused on. The Tories want to fight a dirty war. Fair enough, let them. They're only showing themselves up for what they are and have been for a very long time.
Can I check? Did you read the article today?
I skim-read it.
OK. So it points out some, what they would say, questionable facts about some of the candidates that you're fielding. Does Reform have a problem where maybe it needs to vet more thoroughly before standing candidates?
No. I mean, if you just look at the history of both the major parties, the Labour and the Tories, there have been dodgy candidates since time immemorial. They've been exposed. They've generally been sacked. Indeed, there's even a big row going on at the moment about the deputy leader of the Labour Party. There is no such thing as hardly any such thing as a candidate with absolutely nothing that somebody can attack somewhere. But what we have got in Reform is a record of acting very quickly. We stood down 2 candidates fairly recently. We don't want that sort of stuff messing up our campaign.
OK. I mean, so does Reform still have work to do to be seen, to be perceived to be a respected political party?
I don't think we have any more work to do on that score than the other parties do. I mean, what is serious about the Tory party at the moment? I mean, just what is serious about them? And that, of course, is why they're hemorrhaging support to reform. So I think we have a lot of work to do to get our policies over and to make sure that people know about them. Yes, you're quite right about that. But I don't think we need to worry about our personal image.
Is there a numbers game issue there, though, that you're right, every political party might have some questionable people that get through the vetting process. But if you're looking at the bigger parties, larger numbers of people with a few bad apples, to pull out a cliche. But if you've got a smaller number, then maybe there is more of a concern about why the Mail on Sunday managed to find so many questionable issues.
Well, first of all, so many is a bit of an exaggeration.
As a percentage, yeah, that's what I was trying to get to.
They found 100 from the way you're going on. The fact is that we're standing candidates in every single seat, so we have got a large number of candidates. And the solid fact is that between now and the general election, probably all parties will suffer attacks on some of their candidates. Some of those attacks will be justified. Where they are justified, action has to be taken. Nothing unusual about Reform in that.
So Conservative Party, as we were hearing in the news, could be left with fewer than 100 MPs after the next general election, according to this new poll that came out. That's the main difference here, isn't it? That there's no deal, no standing down of candidates in areas where the Tories might lose seats. Why is the big falling out happen, Dan?
Well, because we fell for that one last time, if you remember, when we were not the Reform Party but the Brexit Party. And we stood down candidates in all seats that the Tories were then holding because we fell for that argument. Well, come on, don't let prejudice, Brexit and all the rest of it, let's be cooperative. First of all, we didn't get Brexit, of course, nor did we get any thanks for what we had done. The Tories actually continued to attack us. And so, no, there's no question of any deal this time. They had their chance. They didn't use it. They were very, very arrogant about it. Now they're paying the penalty. I can't say I'm sorry.
So Rishi Sunak points out, and I'm sure he uses this so often, it'll become one of his priorities, but by saying that a vote for reform is effectively a vote for Labour, because the right traditionally doesn't have a split vote, or in comparison to what the left's been like. The right fights the left and the left fights itself, but now it seems that the split right vote might end up with an election outcome that ordinarily I wouldn't have thought you'd be in favour of.
Well, if you mean, do I favour a Labour government, the answer is no, but I don't favour a Tory one either at the moment. And as far as I'm concerned, a vote for Tory is a vote for Starmer, because you're voting for the status quo. You're voting for one of the two big parties. Starmer's going to win anyway. This is what I say when Tories say to me, oh dear, you might damage us. I say, look, Starmer's going to win anyway. This is the moment for change. This is the moment for people to say, we're fed up with what we've got. We want something different. About every 100 years, that happens. Labour had to break through. It does happen. This is our moment now, when what people should be saying is, do we really want to go on like this, or do we want a big, big fundamental change, as Reform is offering?
Anne Widdecombe, thank you very much. Looks like that fight continues. We'll speak to you again soon. Now, coming up, tomorrow's newspaper front pages and live reaction in the studio from tonight's top pundits. And they'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day, and we get to take a little vote on it, or at least I do. It's Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's been fairly sunny across the northern half of the UK. We've seen increasing cloud in the south, and we're going to see further rain push in over the next few hours. But looking at the bigger picture, low pressure dominates at the moment. It does mean further showers and rain is on the way. And we've got some heavy rain this evening across southern parts of England, and this pushing slowly northwards into the Midlands and Wales as we head into the early hours. Thicker cloud and rain also pushing in from the North Sea to affect northeast England. Generally a little drier across Scotland, Northern Ireland. Here some clear spells, and for most temperatures remaining above freezing. So it's a mixed start to Monday. We've got cloud and outbreaks of rain across this central swathe of the UK. Some brighter skies to the north of it and to the south, but it's to the south where we'll see some heavy showers developing as we move through into the afternoon. Some hail, some thunder in there. We could see some local disruption. Cold under the cloud and rain, particularly northern England, southern Scotland, 9 or 10 degrees. In the best of any sunny spells, either side of this, up to around 14 or 15 degrees. For Tuesday, a mixed picture. We'll have sunny spells and scattered showers across much of the country. However, low cloud, rain and drizzle will affect parts of Scotland. Then later on in the day, further wet and windy weather starts moving into the southwest. It remains unsettled through into Wednesday and Thursday with further rain at times, temperatures around average.
GB News is the home of free speech. We were created to champion it, and we deliver it day in, day out.
Free speech allows us all to explore and debate openly the issues most important to us, our families, and of course, the British people.
Having challenging conversations to enlighten each other.
Which is why we hear all sides of the argument.
We are the People's Channel.
We will always stand by the freedom to express yourself.
On TV, radio and online.
This is GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Christopher Hope.
And I'm Gloria Di Piero, bringing you
PMQs live here on GB News.
Whenever Parliament is in session on a Wednesday at midday, we'll bring you live coverage of Prime Minister's questions. We'll be asking our viewers and listeners to submit the questions that they would like to put to the Prime Minister, and we'll put that to our panel of top politicians in our Westminster studio.
That's PMQs live here on GB News, Britain's election channel.
This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen. Let's get some of your emails. Thanks for sending these through. On the Tories and Reform being at war, Jackie says, ooh, sounds like handbags at dawn. Joan says, the Conservative Party have nothing to be proud of. They've ruined our country, in capital letters. Thank you very much for all of your emails coming through. It's coming up to 10:30. Now it's time for tomorrow's front pages. We can start with the Times. They go with long waits in A&E kill 250 people every week. Figures add to concern about the state of the NHS. Also, they mention the Tory revolt over law to target homeless. And down the bottom, I will quickly mention, they talk about water companies discharging sewage into bathing areas. Where I lead, others follow. The front page of the Eye, Sunak's small boat plan at risk from Home Office indecision. Key elements of the Prime Minister's flagship policy to stop the boats have been given the red at-risk ratings because of failures by ministers. To the front page of the Mirror, Charles at Easter service, King's show of strength, takes step back into public life after responding well to cancer treatment. The front page of The Guardian goes with plan to scrap non-dom tax status is full of loopholes for super rich, is their main story. Israel puts plan to UN to disband Palestine aid agency. Also, cuts force universities to rely on Chinese students. If you go through the story, it's almost over-rely on Chinese students for their funding. The Daily Mail, 250 people, 250 needless deaths each week due to astonishing waits in A&E. The Sun goes with the story of the King again. Return of the King, first public mingle since cancer shock is how they phrase it. And the Daily Star for the big news. Star hasn't left the building. Elvis fans are all spooked up. King of shock and roll, haunting Las Vegas. I'm sure we'll get to the bottom of that one. Let's get a reaction on those headlines. First of all, from tonight's top pundits, comedian Sajila Kershi, dancer and performer Wayne Sleep, and political commentator Joseph David are with us. Let's go with that Times. And I think it was the Daily Mail as well that goes with it. Long waits in A&E kill 250 people every week, even as someone I presume you love the NHS, Sajila.
I do.
That is a shocking number, and it's a death toll.
I mean, that is shocking. That's not to say they don't make mistakes. I was in A&E just a few weeks ago, actually, weirdly, and everyone I've been to, medical practitioner, oh, I've seen you on GB News, by the way, on Mark Dolan's show, so that's interesting. Probably shouldn't have done it whilst my smear test, but anyway.
How did she recognise you during that? What have I not seen on previous shows? I should have been warned.
Yeah, that's good. But no, I mean, obviously, they're not perfect, and you know, they've been in dire straits for a long time. I cannot thank them enough for all the medical support and help. You know, I've always got good support from them. Probably see if they're watching GB News, they're like, get me in, fast track. No, they don't. I'm just joking. But these deaths, it is really worrying because that needs to be addressed. Like, why has this happened? That isn't acceptable.
Yeah, I mean, by the looks of it, this is not talking about like malpractice issues. Waiting lists.
Yes, waiting
if you are
lists.
waiting to be treated and you die before you get treated.
I know that, but I think that's a fallback from a fallover from COVID, because so many things got delayed. You know, I had an op that got delayed massively by a year. It was quite serious. So that's continuing, and they're kind of playing catch up. So I have a lot of sympathy with doctors and nurses, but something is not right, and I honestly don't know what the answer is. You know, you can't keep throwing money at it. I don't think that's worked effectively so far. But I do think there is something that needs to be done. I just don't know what it is.
Yeah, I mean, Wayne, I remember we had the ability to pop up some Nightingale hospitals overnight. It's just a shame there's no one to staff them, otherwise you could use them for a while.
Well, I mean, I've been to most hospitals. I've got a hip replacement. I tore my medial ligament. I had an hernia and prostate cancer. I've had the lot, basically.
Are we playing top trumps?
I think I used to be taller, actually.
I should be thinner.
But what were the waiting list like for you?
No, I mean, my latest experience was I cracked my ribs and, well, I got thrown into a... Never mind, we won't talk about that. No, it's just perfectly all right, side of a bath, a steel bath.
The green room here is getting more and more violent. I'll have a word for you.
Yeah, well, it is, isn't it? Yeah. So, and I went and I was there 3 hours and there was only 5 of us waiting. But it seemed like I walked to a room and there was a lecture going on for the nurses at A&E. And then we were visited by people from the wards who were obviously in the wrong block. But the people that I said, you should take this guy back to his ward with his blanket, because these people, he's interrupting these people, and they were people in pain. And she said, oh, I can't do that part of the hospital, so I have to stay here. Now, that's ridiculous, I think, as well. And when they gave me my X-ray, I was still waiting there, and I knew I had to have a blood test as well. And I said, well, what about if I have the blood test now? Then I won't be here so long after you've seen the results of the X-ray. And he went, oh, good idea. So
they hadn't thought of that before.
Yeah, and the guy who was the hospital, I mean, I think they're wonderful, don't get me wrong, but this is my last experience, and this is why this is happening. Yeah. And the doctor said, quick, let's run to the bay. I said, I can't. And he said, in the case I lose my bay, to examine you.
Goodness. Yeah, terrifying.
So that was what I knew.
But, I mean, we talk about waiting lists all the time, but this really brings it home, doesn't it?
It really does. I think that, I mean, we have to say it again, 250 people die every week because of waiting lists in accident and emergency. This is more than a scandal. This is disgusting. And I'll caveat what I'm about to say with the statement, kudos to anybody who's still sticking it out in the NHS and helping people and working, because you could be getting more money in private. But I'm sick to death of people saying, you know, talking about how their dad's life was saved by the NHS. It's the National Health Service. Of course it's going to save some lives. It's not working. People are dying. They're staying on stretchers in hospital corridors. And the system simply isn't working the way it's supposed to be. People who have been paying into the system their entire lives are now elderly, need support and can't get it. And these are the people it will fall on the hardest. The people without private healthcare, the people without support networks. There should be protests in Trafalgar Square over this.
Whenever we use the phrase paying in, though, we need to remember, like, the reality isn't that there was a savings pot and at some point you will cash this in. At this time when you were paying it in, you were paying for the treatment that people older than you were getting, and now the problem is the funds aren't available for your treatment now you've reached that age. So is the solution different to what Sajila says? It is throwing money at it if more money's needed.
Well, I think the point that was made is that the system isn't working. That we need to streamline it. We're paying far too much money for things which don't cost as much in the private sector, and I don't think throwing money at it can help. I think we need a complete revamp. Some elements of it might even need to be privatised. It's got that bad.
I just think that, you know, I think we never listen to the doctors and nurses, and every time I speak to doctors, they always they have a solution, which I always forget when I come on the show, and I think, oh yeah, well, don't worry, I'll talk about it on the shows. But we're not listening to what they need, and then we just think, oh, we're just throwing money. You're not. There's not a systematic way of how. But I think you're alluding to we should all perhaps pay for.
We are paying for it.
Yeah, we are paying for it, but I mean in terms of private, which is obviously not in everyone's reach. And I think it'd be a terrible shame if the NHS...
we also do have a system at the moment where some people go private. So some parts of the healthcare provision of this nation are private.
Well, it's almost two-tiered. The people who can afford it are getting decent healthcare. They can see their GPs. We have to rely on ever-increasing AI. The system currently isn't working, and we're not getting what we're paying for. We're paying a lot of money in NI, and where's it going to? You go to A&E, and you have to sit there for 5 or 6 hours, and it's got to the stage where you don't go unless it's really serious, because you think, oh, well, they're going to keep me there all night, aren't they?
Well, this is a strange thing. I did sit in there for 5 or 6 hours. It was absolutely packed, and I didn't mind. But I just think that anyone that was a bit more serious, who've got heart issues or whatever, they would have been... Because there is a process where the more serious cases go in sooner.
See if this, although still health-related, makes us feel a bit happier. We can go to the front page of the Mirror with King Charles at Easter service, King's show of strength. And getting some supportive words as well. Someone shouting, what was it, get well soon, someone shouted, and stay strong. Yeah. It's been quite an uplifting video to watch. Yeah. I'm in no way normally Mr. Monarchist kind of guy, but it was nice, wasn't it, to watch this video. Sajila, what do you think?
I think it's lovely. I think it's great that he's come out for Easter weekend and it shows his human side. And I think his mum would be proud of him, actually, because that is a very Queen thing to do. Queen Elizabeth would have done something similar. But yeah.
Wayne, have we been a bit obsessed with seeing the Royals, though, as if we somehow have a stake? It's almost like we treat the Royals worse than the NHS. We pay for it, so we demand to see them all the time, even when they're ill.
No, I think we just get them at certain times of the year automatically. You know, like Christmas speech, 3 o'clock. It's always traditional to sit and watch speech. It wouldn't be Christmas without seeing the speech at 3 o'clock for 10 minutes.
But if they've got health reasons to take a bit of time off, we all deserve time off, don't we?
Well, I just think that...
well, he has, though, hasn't he?
You know, it is in our interest to know whether he's dying or if he's going to be cured. Literally, and this is a show of hands to say, I'm all right, Jack. You see, and I think that's important for the public to know. Absolutely. And a lot of them are royalists and follow the crown all their lives. And for them, this is a sign of thumbs up.
Yeah.
Well, I myself am a royalist, and I have to say, long live the King. It's great news that he's out. He's someone who's got hundreds, if not thousands, of hours of public duty since he was young under his belt, and he's going to want to come out and see people, shake hands, and show that he's OK, because he understands that he's a figurehead for the country, and people look to him for inspiration, especially at this time of Easter.
I mean, we use that phrase, it's in the public interest, and it's one of those where the actual definition of public interest versus the public are interested in it comes down not necessarily just with the King, but the Princess of Wales as well. When we were talking about people's, I mean, not just the conspiracy theories online, but people's obsession with finding out why haven't we found out more. Yes, the public's interested, but it's not actually in the public interest to know this, is it? We don't have a right.
It's none of their business, quite frankly.
It's not.
What goes on the inner side of a family is that family's business, and my family wouldn't want to know what my aunt's doing by secretly finding out what she's
Yes, I agree with you, but it's a bit of a catch-22, because for the royals to remain relevant and popular, they kind of depend on our interest to some extent, and so this is always going to bubble over every once in a while. There is genuine interest, but I think what we've seen over the last couple of weeks with the conspiracy theorists and the trolling, some people need to get a life, actually.
Yeah, I mean, who knows how many of them are bots, but some of it's been terrible. Sajila, what do you think about this? Do we have a right to know information? Obviously, today is a happy one. We've seen the King pressing the flesh, looking healthy, which was lovely.
And that's a positive. But they could have played this differently. I think the palace has got to take some blame on this as well. And I do love the royal family, by the way. The palace has got to take some blame because it was the way that they pitched it all. Like, you know, she's had a big operation. We don't know what the operation is, and it was, you know, and then the photo. There was a lot. They've kind of been a part of
a lot of errors.
And then of course, with the way that social media is, it's going to start up, you know, conspiracy theories. And when she came out and she told us, it all made sense. Absolutely, she needed time out for herself to understand what was happening, then to explain it to her boys. But ultimately, they are the royal family. And what you just said at the beginning, which is like, you know, we are funding them as well. There is you're entitled to some private life, of course you are, but then don't goad us with giving us tidbits of stuff and then letting the public make all sorts of assumptions.
Yeah. We'll take a quick look at The Guardian if we can. I don't know how much details we've got on this one, but it's a fascinating headline. Plan to scrap non-dom tax status is full of loopholes for super rich. But this is Labour analysis finds that Sunak's family could save almost 250 million. That'd be a handy one, that's not bad. Joseph, what do you reckon?
Well, I think that there's always, unfortunately, going to be loopholes for the super rich. The super rich fund all of the main political parties. Call me an old cynic, but in the same way that it benefits the Conservatives, it will benefit Labour as well.
You think there's as much money coming in from the super rich to Labour that goes?
Well, I think that there's a lot of people who are super rich who do support Labour. There's champagne socialists, for lack of a better phrase, it serves them to have everything which comes with a Labour government, you know, high spending, cheap labour. So there will always remain these loopholes. I can't see Labour closing them.
So, Julia, the interesting thing about the changing of non-dom status anyway was that's where Labour were planning on getting some money from. That was the Jeremy Hunt win, removing that money from a potential saving Labour plan to make if and when they win the election.
I think they... I think then again, it's all about loopholes, and I think this needs to go. I don't think it's fair. I don't think it's right, especially when you see people like struggling, and then you've got the PMs over his country and his family. How much did you just say?
250 million.
Yeah, that's just obscene.
It's more than I'll save.
You know,
it is considerably more than I'll save. But I do get the 2p off insurance, so we should all be a little bit happy with that, shouldn't we?
Well, if they don't give them loopholes, it'll be like a friend of mine. They leave the country and don't pay any tax here.
Yeah, but the loopholes always benefit the rich. They never benefit the people, and yet we'll have a go at, like, you know, benefit scroungers. You know, they loot, you know, exploiting the system, blah blah blah. And they're the people that we go after. And yet we're just going to have a little few. Oh yeah, well, you know, we're going to if this happens.
No, I agree with you.
Going, but it just makes me really angry. It's unacceptable.
Oh yes, but it's the way of keeping the rich people in England. By just giving all these loopholes and making tax reductions, else they'll all just get up and leave and we'll have nobody paying tax.
Yeah. I think the rich people out there should give me some of their money.
Yeah, this has made me think there was some good money to be made in the dancing industry.
Thank you very much.
Protecting some loopholes. Hello. Well, it's not technically offshore, but it is in the Thames. Coming up, more of tomorrow's newspaper, front pages and live reaction in the studio from our top pundits, and they'll be nominating their headline heroes and back page zeros of the day. This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen.
GB News Breakfast, every day from 6 a.m.
Do you mind if I ask you a little bit about Sebastian? It really amazes me how a mother who can lose a child in such a shocking and unexpected way, so little, so precious, can then turn that grief into something so positive. How did you find the strength to get up, get a camera crew, as you say, travel to the other side of the world and investigate all of this?
I was angry at Sebastian for dying. You know, you feel like saying, God, 32 years later, and I can still get very, very upset about it. I was angry that something that while he was born and lived with me and slept and then died, they were actively campaigning in New Zealand to try and stop this happening because they had a very high cot death rate there. They had the lady, the Anne Diamond, if you like, of New Zealand, a television presenter called Judy Bailey, went on telly every night and said, if you're just about to put your baby down to sleep, put him on his or her back, not the tummy, and this will help. And there, cot death rate plummeted. And I went out to New Zealand and met her, and it was anger that drove me to come back and demand that we have the same advert here, the same campaign. And of course, I got all this complete nonsense from the Department of Health saying, you know, oh, young mothers do not watch television, I was told. In other words, while New Zealand mums were being told how to save their babies' lives, we actively denied British mums that advice during the time that Sebastian and others were dying.
And the other point I suppose to make is it's helpful to educate all generations, because when I had my babies, my mum would say, oh, he's not settling, just stick him on his tummy, he'll be much happier, that's what we did with you. And we had to say, well, things have changed, and, you know, but it's about educating everybody, because it's not just the mums that get their hands on the babies.
I think the most exciting bit for me is talking to people.
People who I think are ignored often by the major news channels. We're going to give news they want to hear. There's a voice there that needs to be heard. I think there's a chance here for a diversity of opinion to be expressed, which you don't find elsewhere. It's really exciting.
We don't hold back. We're free to say how decisions that are taken here
affect us all around the country. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
2024, a battleground year.
The year the nation decides.
As the parties gear up their campaigns for the next general election.
Who will be left standing when the British people make one of the biggest decisions of their lives?
Who will rise?
And who will fall?
Let's find out together.
For every moment, the highs, the lows, the twists and turns.
We'll be with you for every step of this journey.
In 2024, GB News is Britain's election channel.
Spin.
This is Mark Dolan tonight on GB News with me, Stephen Allen. Let's get to some of your emails on A&E waiting list. David says, too many time wasters turning up at A&E. The triage systems are incompetent and staff not utilised efficiently. Personal experience of waiting all night and never getting to see a real doctor. After my chat with Anne Widdecombe earlier, Paul says the expected wipeout of the Conservative Party is a self-inflicted injury. It's been inflicted by the behaviour of their own MPs. On our discussion about not feeding pets chocolate, Helen says, thank you. We'll find they mustn't... Oh, thank you. So that makes more sense. I thought you were just getting a little praise for the show, but that never happens when I'm on. Think you will find they must not eat raisins also, such as in hot cross buns. And also, you can get raisins in chocolate, so you really do want to back off that one. That's my snack on the way home plan. Thanks for that. We'll move on to the front pages as we take a look with our panel. We go to the front page of the Express. Well, they've got the headline, Get Well Soon, King jokes, I'm doing my best. And also the front page of the Daily Telegraph is in for us to take a look at. Council tax to double for 80% of second homes. More than 150 councils will impose inflated levy in move affecting 130,000 properties. To the panel, a quick one on this one. Is this in any way going to help the housing crisis?
I've got no idea. I don't have any sympathy with people who've got two homes. Obviously I'm cherry picking, because if it doesn't affect me, then I'm not, you know.
As soon as you get your second home, all of a sudden.
So if I get my second home, I should change my opinion accordingly. Yes.
Yeah.
Wayne, any thoughts on that?
Well, if I got a second home, it wouldn't be in this country, so I'm not bothered.
Oh, that's one way of looking at it as well. And these numbers that we're looking at, 130,000 properties.
It's not going to change the country's bank balance in any way, is it? I just hope it's not a gimmick, which unfortunately will hit the middle class hardest. But I'm all for people who have extra paying a little bit extra.
I think doubling it is crazy. I mean, just add a little bit more.
Yeah.
You know, just saying double it is just ruthless, isn't it?
Well, now we'll move on to another Easter-related one. We've been searching for the weirdest Easter traditions around the world. And let me tell you, pretty weird. So I'm going to be quizzing my panel on which of these traditions I'm about to list are true or false. We start with Poland, where children are encouraged to soak passers-by with buckets, water pistols and hoses. True or false? Is that an actual way to celebrate?
I would really like that to be true.
Yeah. So would I.
Yeah, I'm going to go true on that.
It
is true. Historically, it meant that a woman could conceive kids once soaked with water. Now, I'm not an expert in the gynecological arts, but I don't think that's true.
I think it's got to be wet, but not necessarily with water.
Chilly. Families dig up their dead relatives and dance with their bones to symbolise Jesus resurrecting. True or
Well, it
false?
sounds good, but I don't believe it. No, I'll say
We're all
false.
going with false.
Yes.
It is false.
Okay.
This is a tradition in Madagascar, though, which families do every few years to maintain a connection with their deceased loved ones. Isn't that beautiful? Papua New Guinea, people hide cigarettes in trees near churches after the traditional Easter service. Worshippers go out and search for the packets.
That's not very biblical. I think that's false.
You think it's true?
I think it's true.
I don't. False.
Indonesia has a big smoking culture, from what I understand.
Oh, does it?
Yeah,
Oh, it's true. You're right.
Thank you very much.
You got that right. Congratulations.
We all know chocolate is bad for you, so
Yes.
maybe it's a better option.
Cigarettes are better.
Yeah.
Then
But
we
cigarettes can kill.
It's, yeah, as long as there's no sugar in it. Czech Republic, relatives gently whip each other with sticks decorated with ribbons.
Oh, that sounds good to me. I'd like it to be true.
I know that club in Prague.
Oh.
Well, I'm going next week. Tell me where
Got a couple of trues.
I'm going for true.
True.
It is true. This is a way that they give each other good health, apparently. So it's time for Headline Heroes and Back Page Zeros. We go to Sajila. What are you going to give us first of all?
What are you asking first?
Headline hero.
Oh, my headline hero's got to be a King Charles, like a bit chip of the old block. It was a nice video. He does look well, actually. And it reminds me when we did Pengate, how ill he looked then. He must have been not feeling poorly then. So he's my hero.
Surely we've all forgiven Pengate, haven't we? For those of us who've lost a relative, I got a bit snippy about Penn's having to fill in forms when my parents passed away. So
but that's what I'm saying. He might have been in pain, and that's why he was a bit irritable. So I think he looked so much better then than he did then.
Oh, I'm still irritable about pens. Wayne, what are you going to
Well,
give
mine's the same in a way, but it's Princess of Wales, it's Catherine, because she's had to put up with so much this week, the photograph, everything else. And, I said earlier that, if there's something you don't want to be known, that's not life-threatening and it's, has to be exposed, then you should be able to keep it in the family. And I think I don't think if you're unwell and have got something like cancer, it helps. I've heard that actually cancer can get worse with worry and irritation.
Yeah. And headline hero, Yosef, David, what are you going to give us?
So mine is the fearless Iranian journalist, Puriya Zarati, who was stabbed outside his home in Wimbledon. He's been reporting on the regime, and in a time when journalistic integrity is at a premium, this man is speaking his beliefs, even in the face of threats and action.
That's good.
Indeed. Right, now let's take your suggestions for the back page zeros.
It's going to be the Tory government for the lack of transparency and more lies, because the Foreign Office received official legal advice that Israel's broken international humanitarian law, and the government's not announced it. They're ignoring legal advice, and they continue to be complicit in the genocide that's happening in Gaza. Yeah.
You don't like the Tories, you should join Reform. Wayne, what are you going to go for?
Well, it's the Russian government for just arresting a guy who's gay. He's got a gay bar and he was having a drag show and they've arrested him. And unfortunately, that is going on all over Russia. I remember when it was legalised at one point, and I think Putin only legalised it to find out where they are so he can arrest them and put them in jail.
Interesting.
And also a bad luck guy because it was right at the airport. So he was obviously leaving the country to get away. What a bummer.
Yosef.
Well, it could be a bummer.
Got to be. I thought her joke was terrible.
My zero are the conspiracy theorists and trolls who have been hounding our royal family relentlessly. Some people do have a public platform. People are interested in their lives. But there are times when we all need privacy and time with our family. So
yes.
Well, you can take your pick of those yourself at home. Thank you for your company tonight. Mark Dolan is back on Friday at 8 p.m. with Friday Night Live. Headliners is on the way next. Have a good one.
Happy Easter.
That warm feeling inside from Boxed Boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Hello, welcome to your latest GB News weather. It's been fairly sunny across the northern half of the UK. We've seen increasing cloud in the south and we're going to see further rain push in over the next few hours. But looking at the bigger picture, low pressure dominates at the moment. It does mean further Showers and rain is on the way. We've got some heavy rain this evening across southern parts of England, and this pushing slowly northwards into the Midlands and Wales as we head into the early hours. Thicker cloud and rain also pushing in from the North Sea to affect northeast England. Generally a little drier across Scotland, Northern Ireland. Here some clear spells, and for most temperatures remaining above freezing. So it's a mixed start to Monday. We've got cloud and outbreaks of rain across this central swathe of the UK. Some brighter skies to the north of it and to the south, but it's to the south where we'll see some heavy showers developing as we move through into the afternoon. Some hail, some thunder in there. We could see some local disruption. Cold under the cloud and rain, particularly northern England, southern Scotland, 9 or 10 degrees. In the best of any sunny spells, either side of this, up to around 14 or 15 degrees. For Tuesday, a mixed picture. We'll have sunny spells and scattered showers across much of the country. However, low cloud, rain and drizzle will affect parts of Scotland. Then later on in the day, further wet and windy weather starts moving into the southwest. It remains unsettled through into Wednesday and Thursday with further rain at times, temperatures around average.
Looks like things are heating up. Boxed boilers, sponsors of weather on GB News.
Big news, big debates, big opinion. Patrick Christie's Tonight is the week's biggest show. Every weekday, 9 to 11 p.m, we've got the inside track on the day's top stories. There'll be sharp takes you won't get anywhere else. We will set the news agenda, not just follow it, and I want to bring you along for the ride. Whatever it is, we'll have our finger on the pulse. It's news, but it's this close to entertainment. Patrick Christie's Tonight, 9 to 11 p.m, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Michelle Dewberry, and I'm not here to tell you what to think. I'd much rather hear what you have to say. So, send in your opinions to gbviews@gbnews.com. Keep them clean, and you never know, I might read them out. With my panel here on Jubes & Co, we debate, we get stuck into the issues of the day on a show where all views are welcome, especially yours. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Patrick Christie's Tonight, weekdays from 9 p.m.
Has the NHS killed your relative and then lied to you about it? There is an alleged cover-up culture in the NHS. They lie to you about why your loved one died, about poor care, then bury documents with evidence in them, and they try to silence staff who speak out. This is according to the NHS Ombudsman. There are around 11,000 avoidable deaths every year. 11,000. Someone's mum dies, their children know something dodgy happened, and then they're met with a rotten culture, including the altering of care plans, the disappearance of crucial documents, and complete denials. They lie to you, but they really get away with it because the NHS is like a religion, and people dare not criticise it. You'd be accused of NHSophobia. That annual budget is around £180 billion, and we now have about 2 million people working for the NHS. They cannot keep blaming everything on being underfunded and understaffed. If they're covering up medical negligence, it means the problem doesn't get dealt with and it keeps happening. And that is the fault of the NHS managers, the people who run it. They've got the money for 837 non-clinical staff working at English hospitals on the highest paid Band 9 contracts, which is between £99,000 and £115,000 a year. How many nurses would that pay for? How many junior doctors? And they've got the time on their hands to think about making the NHS the world's first carbon-neutral health service. They've got time to consider whether women in labour should be picked up by an electric ambulance that might have to be recharged en route to the hospital. There are NHS managers with a budget of £180 billion, 2 million members of staff, and they're crying about being understaffed and under-resourced. If they spent more time looking after patients instead of finding ways to cover up avoidable deaths, then maybe we'd have a better health service.
Good evening. The top stories this hour. King Charles has made his first major public appearance since his cancer diagnosis. Joined by the Queen, he smiled and waved as he left an Easter Sunday service at St George's Chapel in Windsor, and he went on to greet the crowds. A member of the public told the King to keep going strong, and others said he looked well. The Prince and Princess of Wales missed the service as Catherine continues her cancer treatment. Meanwhile, the Archbishop of Canterbury wished the King and Princess of Wales well during his Easter sermon at Canterbury Cathedral. Justin Welby encouraged the congregation to pray for Charles and Catherine and praised their dignity as they both undergo treatment for cancer. In his Easter message, the Prime Minister paid tribute to the work of churches and Christian communities across the country.
Happy Easter, everyone. This weekend, as people come together to celebrate and reflect on the message at the heart of the Easter festival, I want to pay tribute to the incredible work of Christians in this country. The churches, charities, volunteers and fundraisers who live the Christian values of compassion, charity and self-sacrifice, supporting those in need and demonstrating what it means to love thy neighbour.
Thousands of people turned out to see Pope Francis preside over Easter Mass at the Vatican. The pontiff delivered his Urbi et Orbi blessing from the balcony of St. Peter's Basilica. Pope Francis, who's been dealing with health problems in recent weeks, used his address to renew his call for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza, along with the release of all Israeli hostages. Meanwhile, Israel's Prime Minister says more than 200 gunmen have been killed by his country's forces at a hospital in northern Gaza. Another hospital further south was also targeted by an airstrike. Several tents on the grounds of the Al-Shifa were hit, reportedly killing 4 people and injuring others, including journalists. The Israeli military says it was focusing on a terrorist command centre, the precise hit designed to minimise civilian casualties.